that's right. Yeah,
I'm never going to get it. And then I didn't know till I messaged you this morning that Josh Donaldson hit one in the ninth. I'm like, oh my God, I was already out like a lie. I was pissed because, Alvarez had 3 dingers and the other 2 guys I put in parlays didn't do anything. It's a mess.
He had an absurd game.
All right, Stokastic, here we go. It's your old pal Emac coming to you with one Team McB as we are brought to you by BetMGM with a little earlier live before lock. You've got Mama Gundacker's birthday, so he's off doing that. We've got behind the scenes Yokastic, that would be Mike Lawrence. He is an ordained minister. He will be performing his 4th side gig. He's the only DFS producing bartender ordained minister from Philadelphia that I know who also lives in Buffalo. This is pretty crazy. It's pretty crazy. We got some caveats there, but we're going to have some fun today. We will get out of here on time, but put some questions in chat. We'll have some fun here. No weather to really speak of at this point. We do have 9 games. Of course, there's 27. There are 17 games today with the 2 double headers. We've got all sorts of stuff going on. So we're going to jump right into this. Terry, remind everybody, I want to have you guys give us a like and subscribe. We are marching towards 80,000 subscribers. We will be going live tomorrow at 9 a.m. with 4 hours of NFL DFS / betting content. We have so much to tell you that 11 o'clock, Nick Lepre is going to be going live on the Osmo Fantasy Football channel for a Q&A. For as long as you want. I think that's actually at 11:30. And then at live before lock for NFL at 7 o'clock. Yes, 7 o'clock will be myself, Terry, and Nick will be joining us for the usual 3-man booth of Sunday Night Football. But we're going to get on into this here, Terry. First game that we have, your New York Yankees. Jamison Taillon on the hill. Not a lot of strikeouts with Taillon. Brandon Woodruff on the other side. Strikeouts have been coming and going. Unlike Adrian Hauser, who has lost his strikeouts, and unlike Corbin Burns, who won the Cy Young last year, Woodruff's just kind of come and go. These are 2 of the pitchers we kind of have to talk about tonight because it's a very flat pitching slate, or the better pitchers are in difficult matchups, such as Kirby and Ohtani squaring off against each other tonight. So what do you want to do with your Yankees?
Yeah, I was hoping we wouldn't start with this one. FanDuel lists this one 4th, so I was hoping to kind of ease in to get before we got to my miserable Yankees. But yeah, here we are. I think it definitely makes some sense to look at Brandon Woodruff on this slate. He's in the 10,000s on FanDuel. He's 9,500 on DK, pulling a lot of ownership at 34% on DK, but I think it's warranted. We're talking about a guy with a 29.1% strikeout rate over the course of 127 and a third innings this year, a 3.36 xFIP, 13.7% swinging strike rate. And we know that he's going to be dealing with a depleted version of this Yankees team. This is not the Yankees from June, not the Yankees from earlier in the year. Yeah, they've got Judge and Stanton up top. You can argue Glaber, Josh Donaldson, there's some talent there. But as soon as you get into the Oswaldo Cabrera, Oswald Peraza, Marwin Gonzalez, Kyle Higashioka, Aaron Hicks part of the lineup, my voice is failing me. It just gets really weak. There's plenty of strikeouts there. So I see an upside game in the cards for Woodruff. I don't know that I'll push it all the way out to the field because I do want to get to a spread. Like you said, I just think there's some interesting mid-range pitchers. And I don't think, maybe apologies to Shohei Ohtani because of the matchup. I don't think that the top end really pushes out to that extreme level of like a Verlander versus the A's and when he's healthy kind of a setup where he's projecting like 20 points out ahead of these guys. The one guy who projects out ahead of the field for me is Chris Bassitt against the Pirates. That's a product of the matchup. We'll get to that one. But I think I want to get to pretty broad spread of these pitchers. There's a lot of talented second tier types, Woodruff included probably, that I think it just makes some sense to undercut that big chunk of ownership on him while still getting to a nice spread of Woodruff. Taillon on the other side, completely unowned, 7,300, 8,500 DK and FanDuel, single digit ownership, easy enough to get to. He's what you're getting with Jamison Taillon, probably a better real life pitcher than a DFS pitcher, 20% strikeout rate, just 4.3% walks, doesn't tend to get himself in too much trouble, but doesn't have that extreme high upside. You're hoping for 6 innings, a complete game. You got to worry about the quick hook from Aaron Boone with that Yankees bullpen. So I don't love the Taillon spot, but he's arguably under-owned at that price.
Yeah, and if we kind of look at the top pitchers tool here on DraftKings, you've got 5 pitchers that are between 19 and 24%. You mentioned Ohtani, Woodruff in this game. You mentioned Bassitt. The others are Aaron Nola and Julio Urias. Urias going to be potential. You know, he's not like he goes a ton of pitches anyway. We know Reston Dave Roberts is in the house. We'll talk about that. But what's the best case scenario? Oh my God, his pitcher has a no hitter into the 5th. Of course, he's going to take him out for the 6th. Nope. 69 pitches last night, and that was all she wrote. And expect that down the stretch. Expect something along the range of 70 to 80 pitches for Urias tonight. Now, this is probabilities. If he's cruising or getting there and he gets into the 5th, whatever, you know, it's going to be. But we saw the best case scenario, and it was not great.
Yeah, and for that team, perhaps above all others, with his quick hook with Dave Roberts out there, and you know, especially Urias, like you said, is kind of a short starter anyway a lot of the time, and just with the fragility of their pitching staff in general, I think they're going to be the most extreme example of protecting arms as we go down the stretch here, and that's honestly the right thing to do. I said it at the beginning of the season when what was it, Kershaw was chasing a no-hitter and they yanked him. It was that was the right thing to do then, and it's the right thing to do. The individual history doesn't matter. These guys are paid to win baseball games and win titles.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. So that's kind of where the pitching's shaking out for those. I didn't mention Taillon. He's kind of down. Again, things are very, very flat in all of this. Taillon still has what? 10% chance of being a top 2 pitcher, but he is right in the mix with the top 2 value plays. Literally Connor Pilkington, no thank you. Jose Urquidy, we'll talk about him. Cole Irvin against the Astros, no thank you. And then everybody else is between 11 and 14% on
DraftKings. Urquidy's the wrinkle there, I think, for the Taillon shares. That's obviously a great spot for him. He's a mediocre pitcher, but that's a fantastic spot. So we'll get to that one. But yeah, looking at the individual, the single game, single pitcher site, you get Taillon. He's the top guy of the bottom third of the board, but he's at 4.3% of being the most likely top starter. Ohtani is at the top of the board at only 9.8%. So yeah, that's half, but it's still, you're talking about less than 10% for Ohtani probability of being the top starter and 5% for Taillon. That's, yeah, it's a negligible enough difference when we're dealing with one pitcher slot. So if you believe, I think there's a little bit of meat on the bone there. He'd be my value guy.
All right. Let's go on to, boy, I've pulled these things from so many sites. Let's go on to our next
team. Godfather just started over here on the TV that's on over there. So, I mean, I could just.
You just kind of zone out here. That'll be good. And, you know, just when you think you're out,
Emac
pull you back in. Pittsburgh Pirates, New York Mets. Bryce
Are we not
Wilson.
going to talk bats in that game?
Oh, I guess we can. I like anybody going against Jameson Taillon. Apologies to Terry. I would rather have stacks than one-offs going against him. I'm semi-ambivalent towards stacking against Woodruff. I think he can't allow power. The Yankees, we do have their lineup. So, of course, Judge, Stanton, Donaldson would be the potential power options. But as Terry sort of hit off at the beginning, the back half of this lineup, I did not see T. McBee in there. But if this was a home game, I have a feeling you would be on the 9 subway out to the Bronx. Did I get the number right? I'm pulling it out of thin air. No, not even close. All right.
The B, the D, or the 4. I take the D train.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you can always get to some shares of Aaron Judge at 2.3% ownership. Giancarlo Stanton for 2,700 on FanDuel at 8% ownership, 5,300 and 1% on DK, 6,500 for Judge and still 4.3%. You're paying a much higher premium on the DraftKings slate, but you can always get to those guys against basically anybody, Woodruff included. And if you want to stack Yankees, Torres and Donaldson are right there in the top of the order, both pulling in single-digit ownership. It's easy enough to get to this team. It's just like we were saying, it's a bad version of this lineup now. You got Miguel Andujar hitting 5th. Cabrera and Peraza, works in progress. They might turn into decent players in the majors, but we don't have enough of a book on these kids, and they're not really producing very much so far. Cabrera, over his first 102 plate appearances, I know he had a nice first game, but he's sitting at 215, 275, 312 with a .097 ISO, creating runs 32% worse than average. I mean, there's there's a lot of question marks around this. So not a great version of the Yanks. The Brewers probably more interesting going against Taillon, not a big strikeout pitcher, right? 1-in-5 type strikeout guy. They're all getting individual single digit ownership as well. So it's very interesting. The only guy pulling double digit is Rowdy Tellez on the FanDuel slate. So I think that's definitely a spot you can look to sink some shares into. Yelich, Adames, Tellez, Renfroe, Colton Wong, Andrew McCutchen at the very least. And I wouldn't leave Jace Peterson out. 2,800 for a guy who can swipe a couple bags if he gets on. That's kind of an interesting bat down toward the bottom of the lineup. So I like the Brewers a lot more than the Yankees in this one, but I'll probably have shares of the Yanks too if I'm building 150.
All right, that most definitely makes sense. Now to Gotham's other team here. We've got the Mets who are hosting the Pirates. Bryce Wilson. That's all we need to know about his pitching skills. We'll talk about him when we talk about the Mets bats. Chris Bassitt, on the other hand, disappointed everybody. We saw the frisky Cubs earlier this week just come in and knock around the Metropolitans. Completely unexpected, but that is just baseball being baseball. In his last 9 games, Bassitt has allowed just 2 home runs. Both of those came on Monday against Chicago. Pretty brutal. He's been a top he's been a top 25 pitcher both in ERA and WHIP this year. He's come pretty close to holding his just over a strikeout per 9 that he had last year. He's like about 8.4 this year, so that's good to see. It's the 3rd highest of his career, which is pretty solid. And the projected Pirates lineup today, almost a 30% strikeout rate. We do not have their official lineup, but that's a 2-year trailing strikeout rate. We're definitely going back to Bassitt. The bats, well, of course, that would be taking pretty much anybody against poor Bryce Wilson here. Wilson made 7 starts, 1 relief appearance since the beginning of August. Those 38.1 innings, he has 22 strikeouts, 10 home runs. That's just brutal. Lefties, 370 WOBA and a 238 ISO over the last 2 years. And then righties still getting it done, 340 WOBA, 184 ISO. All Mets, all the time. I'm sure you co-sign on that one. Would you like to attack Mr. Bassitt? Because we've seen he is gettable. It's rare, but he is gettable.
Not really. I mean, I wouldn't begrudge anybody a handful of Pirate stacks because they're all 0.1% owned, 0.9% owned. The highest owned guy on either site looks like Rodolfo Castro at 3.5% for 2,600 on DK. So you're not dealing with any of the field here. You're just throwing them up against a very good pitcher. He's not an extreme strikeout guy. He does allow some contact, but he's just very, very good at keeping the ball in the yard, keeping the runners off base like you were hinting at. So I trust Chris Bassitt a lot more than I think this Pirates offense has a chance to get to him. But if you're going there, O'Neal Cruz, Brian Reynolds, maybe Castro, Ben Gamel, Brian Hayes, maybe Michael Chavis at the dead minimum, despite it being a righty matchup, is not all that bad if he's in the lineup. So there's a couple spots to go to on the Pittsburgh side, but really it's all about the Mets, like you were hinting at. Major upside for the Mets bats. They're getting some attention, less so on DK where they cost a little bit. They're cheap on FanDuel, so they're pulling mid-teens ownership, but it's nothing that you can't roster. Wilson, 14.8% strikeout rate, a 4.29% home run rate on the season, 43.9% hard hit, 10.6 degree average launch angle. You can hit some home runs off of this guy. So I'm happy to grab some shares of the Mets. And then, the Bassitt side, I just want to load up on 25% on FanDuel, 33% on DK. That's about right. Like that's, if you just gave me a blank slate and just asked me to write it out where everything would land, that's about where I think I would put him in this matchup. And I think you can go either way. I think you can get over the field if you want to, if it's your favorite spot of the day. If you're more like me and you're inclined to spread out a little bit, I think it's fine to undercut that, but not by that much. Like if it's at 25, I want to be at like 18, somewhere around there. Like I want a lot of Chris Bassitt in this spot here. I have no concerns about what the Cubs did to him earlier in the week.
All right. Just quickly hitting the individual Mets, anybody swinging the stick from the left side of the plate. So that means Tyler Naquin, surprise. I don't know if it's a surprise start, but I figured he would not be in the lineup, and Vogelbach was. Surprise! They both are. Yep. Pirates only have 2 lefties in the bullpen. One of them pitched last night. The other one pitched 34 pitches 2 days ago. I don't even remember their names, so this isn't an issue. But we always like to point out that Brandon Nimmo and McNeil field their positions so well, they're unlikely to be pinch hit no matter what. And then you've got, of course, Pete Alonso, who is absolutely phenomenal. in all situations. Francisco Lindor, switch hitter. He's amazing. You have Eduardo Escobar towards the bottom of the lineup. His best power is when he's swinging from the left side of the plate, also a switch hitter. And then Naquin actually rivals the numbers of Pete Alonso when he gets to go against right-handers. Not so good against lefties, but he is pretty solid.
Story. Yeah, Naquin can mash the ball a lot, particularly against righties, like you said, overall on the year. And most of these plate appearances come against righties because he's a platoon hitter with 40.3% hard hit rate, a 10.5% barrel rate. That's definitely a guy you can turn on one. You just deal with the pinch hit risk. Vogelbach, very similar numbers and similar kind of a situation. I do quibble with the construction of the lineup with Jeff McNeil hitting third. To me, that's not a 3 hitter. I know he's hitting 319 with a 371 on base percentage. Most of Jeff McNeil's production comes from slap hitting batting average on balls in play. I want a guy who can drive in runs, drive the ball a little bit more, hitting third. But it's fine. And for DFS purposes, it's definitely fine because he's got multi-position eligibility. He's 4,500 on DK, 3,000 on FanDuel. So arguably under-owned, just a little bit miscast in my mind as a 3 hitter. Alonso hitting cleanup. Obviously, you can get to Lindor hitting second where he belongs, Nimmo where he belongs in the leadoff spot. So it's a very good lineup. Definitely a bad pitcher on the hill to throw Mets bats at.
All right, quick promo here. If you are new to Stokastic Plus Platinum or an NFL user, we want to give you a chance to have our NFL DFS tools for a little test drive before purchasing them. So we've got a great offer here for you. You can get access to all of the NFL DFS tools 100% free for 3 days.
Did you say 100% free?
100% free for 3 days. This includes all the premium content and tools that we have to offer, including new tools such as our lineup generator and player compare, as well as player projections, ownership projections, top stacks, the boom bust tool, and oh, so much more. All you need to do is click the link in the description of this video below to join. Activate your 3-day trial now. Please note, Fantasy Cruncher is an add-on and not included with this trial offer. It's a pretty good deal. Got a lot of NFL coming up tomorrow and Monday. Double header on Monday night, 2 Monday night football games. So
let's plan this out real quick for the people, right? Because they get 3 days. There's obviously a massive NFL slate tomorrow. We've got Monday Night Football on Monday, and then Tuesday is when next week's projections usually drop, right? So if they're gaming that out a little bit, they could probably get 2 weeks worth of content for free, or at least the initial part of next week for free if they think it through. So figure out the timing and jump on that. 3 free days, especially with tomorrow loaded up, $1 million up top on both sites. No, I'm going to be playing.
Absolutely. All right. Minnesota Twins at the Cleveland Guardians. Josh Winder? Not sure. Not excited about him either. Connor Pilkington on the other side. It's a shame that so many of the Twins are injured. It's a shame that I guess it's not a shame that all of the production is essentially concentrated in 3, maybe 4 players for the Guardians here. I don't want anything to do with these pitchers. I'll cap them both out at 5% just to try to make things work if needed. We're going to be so flat on pitching, it really doesn't matter anyway tonight because there are so many options that are more likely to do better than this duo. Not a lot better, but more likely to do better than this duo. How do you want to approach this game? This is one of like 3 wrinkles we have on this.
Yeah, if I'm going to this game, it's only for the bats. I don't think we need the value in those pitchers as far as the price goes, and I don't think they're going to deliver for you if you do try and squeeze that value out of them. We're talking about Pilkington leading the way with an 18.4% strikeout rate. Winder behind him at 16%. Pilkington walks 12.6% of hitters. That's egregiously bad. Winder's a little bit better in that department, 7.3%, but neither one of these guys is worth starting on the mound. Both of these guys are worth attacking with some bats. Twin side of things, you could definitely look at like an Arraez, Correa, Miranda, Gary Sanchez. Everybody knows I don't really like Gio Urquidy. I'm just looking at this projected. The projected's got Gary hitting 5th, Gio Urquidy hitting 4th, Celestino hitting 6th, Nick Gordon hitting 7th. It's not the greatest version of this lineup like you were hinting at there, but there's definitely some pop around a guy like Gary. For all of his flaws, Gary Sanchez still has a 48.1% hard hit rate and a 14% barrel rate. When Gary Sanchez makes contact, the ball can still travel. So I'm happy to get to him. He's 25% owned on DK though at 3,400, 15% on FanDuel for only 2,500. I think he's more interesting on FanDuel where you don't need to play catchers, but I think he's worth playing, especially if you're going to Twins. They're a little popular for my tastes. Like I'll have some, but I'll probably be below the fields, and that goes for both sites. And it's similar for the Guardians. They're just drawing a lot of ownership around guys like Oscar Gonzalez, Tyler Freeman, Luke Molly, who are like, yeah, they're okay. They're in a good matchup here. But do I really want to get overextended to shares of those guys? Jose Ramirez, I'll definitely take massive shares of anytime. Ahmed Rosario at 8.9 on DK is arguably under-owned. So those are the guys I'm going to focus on in the Guardians lineup. But again, I think I would undercut where the field currently projects while still liking both sides of the offense.
Yeah, really nothing else to belabor on this particular matchup. Just kind of really. If we were on a 6-game slate, we'd probably have to start taking sides. We're on a 9-game slate, so we don't need to worry about that.
What would a 6-game slate do to the ownership in this one? This would be Coors Field level on a smaller slate. I think
pretty much
key spot for offense for the field.
Oh, all right. Oakland Athletics at the Houston Astros. Cole Irvin and his woeful 17.6% strikeout rate going against the Astros. That's just a recipe for disaster. On the other side, you have Jose Urquidy. He is someone who is interesting tonight. Bit of a late bloomer. He's 27. He's got 3 years under his belt in the majors. If he was not playing against such a poor offense, this would be a take it or leave it spot. However, he's 7,700 on DK, 8,800 on FanDuel. He is coming off the worst outing of his season last Saturday against the Angels. He allowed 10 hits, 1 home run. He did only issue 1 walk. In the matchup prior to that, he faced those same Angels and blanked them. So it's one of those where it's baseball being baseball. Oakland, much worse team because they don't have Trout, they don't have Ohtani, etc. So we're willing to take a chance here. 17 starts on the season, 3.3 ERA. He has allowed 3 or fewer runs in 14 of his 17 starts. That part's impressive. Oakland has scored 3 or fewer runs in 9 of their last 15. The other 3 games,
and like 85% of their games all year.
Yeah, 5, and a 6, I think was in there. There was no 9er. We did not hear a 9er, Tommy boy. All right. The Astros are almost 3-1 favorites at home. We've got a quality start in the mix for Urquidy. We're all over this. We're all over the Astros as well. We do have their lineup. Does not look like any. I've been waiting for them to start giving some people the day off. Altuve got the day off a couple days ago. Alvarez, the day prior to that. But the last 2 days, they've run out essentially their core lineup of Altuve, Diaz, Alvarez, Bregman, Tucker, Mancini. And then they rotate around with Vasquez is catching tonight. Otherwise, it's Maldonado. McCormick's in there, and I'm not entirely sure who Hensley is. Yeah, let's see this. David Hensley, 23 plate appearances this year, 316, 435, 421 with a 105 ISO, creating runs 54% better than average in that small sample, hitting 9th, 42.9% hard hit rate, 0.0% barrel rate so far, 2,500 on DK, 2,000 dead minimum on FanDuel as a shortstop, which is kind of interesting. So he's in the lineup for Pena. It's Pena.
That was what wasn't clicking. Who the hell is not in this lineup right now? So that's what I wanted to talk that through.
As soon as you see Aledmys Diaz, you look to see, okay, who's not in the lineup. I did not see Aledmys
Diaz and Hensley are in there. Who the hell is missing? That was weird for me for a second there. But I like this version of the lineup. I think we can load up on shares of the Astros against Cole Irvin. Overall for the season, the Astros against lefties, second best in baseball in ISO 195, best in baseball by a wide margin, 16.2% strikeout rate, creating runs 27% better than average in this situation, a 3.91% home run rate against lefty. This team mashes left-handed pitching. It does tend to drive people away from Jordan Alvarez and Kyle Tucker, which is a massive mistake that I've been trying to call out for everybody out there all season long. Both of those guys have no issues hitting any lefty. And this lefty, my God, these guys will have no problems hitting this lefty. So don't run away from them. They're both under-owned on DK, appropriately owned maybe. Actually, Tucker a little under-owned on FanDuel, only 7.5%. I want to get to more Astros than it looks like the field is getting to against Cole Irvin here. And I think it makes sense to get to Urquidy, specifically on FanDuel, 12.9% for 8,800. That should probably be a little higher given the matchup here. He's not an extremely good pitcher, 19.4% strikeout rate on the year, but he's capable. He's serviceable enough to get through this lineup a few times, get to that quality start, and he could find a handful of strikeouts here and make himself a reasonably productive pitcher for the price and everything on this slate. So, and then 7,700 on DK, by the way, that is a
great discount spot. He's pulling like 30% ownership, but I think it's totally warranted as the value price SP2.
All right. That's my assessment of the Oakland Athletics tonight.
Chas McCormick drawing a lot of DK ownership. He's the highest owned player on DK. He's only 2,700. He's a guy I throw into the mix a lot because I like him, and he tends to go under owned. But today he's pulling 10% on FanDuel for 23, 13% on DK. I like his barrel rate. He puts bat on ball really well, 11.2% barrel rate. 39% hard hit is down a little bit from who he usually is. 357 plate appearances, 13 home runs, a 171 ISO. It's not as productive as he's been in sneaky spots in the past. And with that ownership, it's not the most appealing Chas McCormick spot, but he's a guy that I wouldn't necessarily skip if I'm searching around for a value bat at the end of that lineup. Just an interesting guy that I was throwing in the mix. And then Trey Mancini, only 2.6% owned for 4,000, 2.8% on FanDuel for 2,700. That's just an interesting bat from the end of that lineup too, particularly against the lefty.
Yeah, most definitely. Mancini tends to go under the radar. He was an amazing hitter in Camden Yards. Adam has pointed out on a couple shows, I was not aware of this at all, so I definitely want to attribute this to him. But he was saying that for where he hits the ball, that Houston is actually the best ballpark he could play in.
Yeah,
which is kind of interesting.
I've heard that, and the changes in Camden like specifically targeted his power as well. Yeah. So it's like, yeah, it was the worst of the situation on that side and the best of the situation on this one. So definitely not a bat to sleep on.
All right. The bats to sleep on, most of the Athletics you could get by with Murphy, Brown, but
I see what you did.
You're the only one that would get that. Those are the really only
probably a chat. He probably got it.
Yeah, the only two we really want.
Remember when Kramer was on Murphy Brown on Seinfeld? When Kramer moved to California and he got
that's right.
On Murphy Brown. He was Murphy Brown's rotating secretary for a week.
I forgot about that. I also forgot to mention Dermis Garcia and Shane Langeliers, if you're getting a little frisky.
Yeah, they're cheap. To me, the field can have them. I mean, they could certainly get to Urquidy. It wouldn't even be surprising to see them put a couple of runs on Urquidy. So maybe I'm going to grab a couple shares of like the home run hitter guys, maybe as one-offs because they're very cheap and they're easy to get to. I just don't like stacking bad teams. So I'll see where they come up as I run lineups later on, but it's not what I'm going to go out of my way for, specifically on DK, where it's still mid-single digit ownership. It's not crazy, but they're not like, 0.5% owned. They're, 5% owned. So it's
Urquidy, while popular, so is almost everybody else. So it's not like this is the one leverage spot where even if you get this right, what's a great outing for Oakland? I just mentioned how few runs they score. 6 runs, 3 home runs. Great. If it's concentrated on the guys you play, knock yourself out.
Right. You have to nail that game where they happen to go off for a couple home runs. You have to happen to have the right guys in your lineup. You're threading a very fine needle there. And like you said, like if Urquidy was getting 45, 50, 60% ownership at that value price, I think it would be worth maybe attacking or considering it from that angle. But you've got guys like Quintana on this slate, Taillon on this slate, who are going to pull some of that value-based ownership and justifiably slow. So I just don't see it as a spot to really get aggressive about.
All right, that takes us to our next game here. Cincinnati Reds at the St. Louis Cardinals. This is game 2 of the doubleheader. Hunter Green taking the mound. Hunter Green and all his strikeouts. Hunter Green coming off in injury. He missed about a month. He has made 3 appearances in the minor leagues, going 28, 48, and am I reading the right column? 66 pitches. I suspect he's missed so much time throughout his career via injuries and such. I don't think they're going to push him too hard tonight. I picked him up as a late season streamer. He was already off the wires in the head-to-head leagues because it's the playoffs, but I picked him up in my handful of roto leagues. I'm counting on 3 or 4 innings tops, but I think he could luck into 3 or 4 strikeouts, maybe even 5 on limited pitches in this matchup, depending on who comes in the watered down version. But we saw enough righties earlier get out there for the Cardinals that means their lefties are going to be playing tonight. So not a great spot for him. On the other side, we have Jose Quintana. Just very nondescript, perfectly average pitcher. He is going against Cincinnati, which is, good for pretty much all pitchers. What do you like or dislike from this Midwest matchup?
Yeah, I think the Quintana spot is getting overlooked by the field. 19.7% strikeout rate on the season, 3.79 xFIP in 143 innings. It's not great. Like those aren't in any way eye-popping numbers. They're below league average in a lot of ways.
but you're talking about a sub 10% owned pitcher for 7,800 on DK, 2.3% owned at 8,100 on FanDuel, going against one of the worst teams in baseball. Cincinnati collectively over the season has a 24.2% strikeout rate against left-handed pitching. That's 24th in baseball. They create runs 11% worse than average. That's 28th out of 30 teams. Their 139 ISO is 24th. Their 2.44% home run rate is also 24th. This looks like a really good spot for a guy like Quintana who can pitch deep into a game, get through some clean innings here, get you to the quality start if you need that bonus on FanDuel, find a few bonus strikeouts against a bad baseball team. Yeah, a couple of these righties could turn on the ball. Aristides Aquino could hit one of his weird random home runs. He could also strike out 4 times. There's a lot of randomness that could happen in this game, but under-owned Quintana is definitely an appealing spot, particularly at that FanDuel ownership. Just 2.3%. It's easy to go like 5x the field, and you're only talking about a handful of lineups. So that's a spot I'm definitely interested in if I'm playing this slate. Green on the other side, I agree, by the way, with the limited innings. They have nothing to play for. They're just giving the kid a couple innings at the major league level to round out his season. He's had a very nice year, 28.8% strikeout rate. I believe in the talent. I just don't think he's going to get the depth to be interesting for you.
That's kind of the assessment from me as well. All right, everybody, BetMGM. I know there's 200 of you in here, but BetMGM, a great offer right now. If you bet $10, you can win $200 if any team scores a touchdown. Now, this is for Sunday NFL. You have to make your bet on Sunday. You can bet on the money line of any team in action on Sunday in the NFL, but it has to be your first bet. If you join up tonight and bet baseball, you're not going to get this deal. If you join up tomorrow and your first bet is not the money line, or it's another sport, or it's an NFL same game parlay, whatever, you're not going to get this deal. That's the double trigger here. You got to, triple. You got to come into our link, make your deposit, $10 on a money line, NFL money line tomorrow, and then they're going to give you $200. So jump through those couple of hoops. It's $200. Now I know Josh isn't going to go bend over and get $200 off the counter. You know, he's not, even if you handed him $200, he's just too cool to take that. I will.
We're going to test that one day, by the way. If we ever have like the Stokastic convention, we're going to get like $200 in a little thing. We're going to tie it to a fishing line and we're going to throw it out there. We're going to yank it away from it and see how long he chases it for. I don't buy that.
I would contribute the $200 just to see that happen.
So hey, if you're taking advantage of this BetMGM promo real quick, how would you play it? Would you go into the to the lines and would you really look for would you bet like the favorite on the money line, just like the best favorite of the day, book a quick easy win, or would you go, since you know you're getting $200 for free just for having made the bet, would you fish around for like a big underdog and try and get double paid on it?
I would probably try to find a reasonable underdog. Just because if you're going for the money line, I mean, in football, all of a sudden you're looking at like a minus, 170 and your $10 bet wins you $6. You're like, well, that's not fun. But you have to bet the money line, which means, you could get 3x on this happening. Then that team's probably a 9.8 point underdog. Mm-hmm. All right. Does that make sense? So you try to find someone where you think you could get an upset, right? Similar to what we saw last week with Chicago in the crappy weather game, or what have you. That would be where I would sort of look if you have a lean, but I wouldn't stress too much about it. And if I just wasn't sure, put it on the other one. But guess what? Those favorites lose a lot too.
They do.
So,
but always, I mean, when you're getting $200 guaranteed,
when you're getting $200,
bet, it's kind of fun to play around with.
Yeah, it's like getting another 19 bets, the 19 opportunities off it. Well, technically another 20, but
free, not bad.
Yeah, but it's good. All righty, 4 to go. Phillies in Atlanta. Aaron Nola in a tough.
Real quick, just since we didn't address it, I sat here biting my tongue through the promo, but I think it is worth loading up some cards bats, despite the Hunter Green of it on the hill, especially if we think he's only getting 3 innings and then you're getting into that Cincinnati pen. I think there's some pretty good upside for those cards bats. They're drawing some attention on the FanDuel slate, and we'll see who's in the lineup. But on DK, they're going to be under owned, so that's an interesting spot. We don't need to go through the individuals; everybody knows who they are.
All right. Phillies at Atlanta. Jake Odorizzi, he's a fine pitcher, but this is a tricky matchup. We do have the Phillies lineup. The backup, not that great. Bryson Stott, Nick Maton, and Matt Vierling. Not overly scary, but Schwartz, Bohm, Harper, Realmuto, Segura, all pretty good there. So it's not an easy matchup for Odorizzi. 10%er and move on for him. Nola on the other side, one of the more talented pitchers we have going tonight in one of the toughest matchups. That makes it rather tricky. He's probably a 15% cap for me. Could he come out, spin 7 innings with 9 strikeouts and 2 or 3 earned runs? Yes, absolutely. Could they get to him early? Yeah, probably. Is he going to get a quality start? 50-50 on this one. And that's only because he's been pretty darn good this season and still at the apex of his career powers. But at 10,100, oh my God, it's expensive. Not today. Go look at the hitter prices. There's enough cheapies. We just got all the Reds announced. They've got their buy one get one prices for half of them on DK. So you're burning 2 roster slots, but you can fill it for just $4,000. So for me, it's Nola would be the most intriguing. I'm not overly interested in Atlanta. I usually will take them against everybody, but what's a worst case scenario for Nola? He gives up 2 home runs. 4 runs, goes 6 innings, and then they get another couple runs off the bullpen. Again, similar to what we said about a couple other teams, then you need to have all those guys in your stack. The challenge with the Braves, it can come from anywhere. This is one hell of a lineup. I mean, they've got Ozzie Albies back. I messaged Terry yesterday, and he's like, yeah, they snuck it back in the lineup. Yeah, he's batting 8th, but he is finally back. They're getting his sea legs before they head to the postseason. Eddie Rosario batting 9th. He'd probably be a 6 hitter on half the teams in the league, right? So this is a tough lineup, meaning the production can come from anywhere. Very difficult to stack in those situations. Anything else you want to add on this one?
It's weird. It's a spot where I feel like Nola should be lower owned by the field, which would make him more appealing and make me want to get to him a little bit more. Just given his strikeout upside, 28.6% strikeout rate on the season, and his quality. He's one of the better pitchers in all of baseball. He doesn't get himself in any trouble. 3.4% walk rate on the season, only a 31.8% hard hit rate. He's very difficult to light up. So it's going to keep me away from the Braves for the most part, a team that I get overloaded to a lot of the time, even against good pitching. I just don't know at ownership how much I'm going to go to the Nola side of it. He doesn't project great because of the way that the Braves offensive acumen comes into play in my model here. And that's an issue I always have to tangle with against this Braves team, because their strikeouts are appealing, but they're one of the best offenses in baseball for run creation and for power against right-handed pitching. So it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of a situation. If that ownership comes down, I'll grab more shares. If the ownership stays where it is, I'll probably leave it alone a little bit on the Nola side. And then on the Braves bats, I'll have a few, but not many, because I trust Aaron Nola implicitly. The Phillies against Jake Odorizzi, though, I think is an interesting spot. It looks like they're kind of under-owned on the DK slate, everybody below 10%. They're affordable enough. On the FanDuel side of things, only Schwarber and Harper, drawing the 2 big lefties, drawing any kind of ownership. So I think they're easy enough to get to in full stack form. And like Matt Vierling, the bottom of the lineup, you brought him up. Yeah, he hasn't been the most productive hitter. 235, 291, 327 with a .093 ISO and a 74 WRC plus. That's not good. That's why he's hitting 9th. But what's kind of appealing is a 47.1% hard hit rate. A guy who can hit the ball that hard, that regularly, can always be in my lineup as a sneaky DFS option. He doesn't go deep all that frequently, but if you get him in the right spot for 2,300, that's a potential tournament winning kind of a play if you're going to Philly stacks. So I wouldn't completely leave him off the table just because he's not a good baseball player, right? Which is a weird thing to say because we're hunting for the most likely guys to produce, but we also want to get those unlikely bats in here. So I do think Vierling's interesting. Stott Mate's on a little bit interesting as lefties down there as well. So 1 through 9, I can grab some Philly stacks here.
All right. Clayton Eskew wants to know where Schwarbs is on your bomb detector.
Let's pull up the old bomb detector here. We'll take a quick look. Of course, bomb detector copyrights Mr. Gundacker, who could not be here with us today. But in my old home run model here, that doesn't have a cleverly branded name, maybe we should have a contest to name my home run model. Schwarbs is number 2, 15.02, the magic number being 10. So he's half again on top of the old magic number. The only person ranked ahead of him is Mr. Mike Trout, who, it's Mike Trout. Immediately behind him, Paul Goldschmidt, Pete Alonso, Jose Ramirez, Nolan Arenado.
All righty.
Star-laden home run model top today.
Yep. And Jeff Williams says, why aren't the Phillies getting more ownership and higher rank playing in a hitter's part against a gas can? Well, Atlanta's a hitter's part when it's really, really, really warm. It tends to get a little more neutral, and the humidors that are at all of the parks this season can kind of neutralize things. Remember, Like in Seattle, they're drying out they're drying out the ball in Seattle. In Colorado, they're making it heavier, right? So they're adjusting the humidors to try to neutralize some of the drastic park effects that are there, because they're just, God only knows why, but it's baseball. They're just trying to normalize something, except the real problems at hand. So the other thing is, if we look over the last 2 seasons, he has 5.3 expected and xFIP. So that's one of those where it's like, it's not bad, it's not great. Does he have bad games? Yes, because he tends to allow some fly balls here. He only has about a 35, it's under a 40% ground ball rate, if I remember correctly. But he can, if this hit sequencing works out in his favor, if he gives up a home run and there's nobody on base, or he gives up what would have been a bases clearing double and nobody's on base, he kind of survives. But those are why. It's a good question. Absolutely.
He's a veteran innings eater of a right arm. He's not anybody that is going to get a playoff start, I wouldn't think, unless something disastrous happens to that rotation. 18.2% strikeout rate, a 7.2% walk, a 4.68 xFIP. This is a targetable pitcher. What he has been doing well this year is limiting hard hit. Only 33.7% hard hit rate, a 6.9% barrel. But still, even with that, he's allowed a 3.21% home run rate. I think Odorizzi is gettable. I agree that the Phillies are a little bit underowned. I also would not necessarily call him a total gas can, right? He's a serviceable major league veteran. That's about all he is. But I do think that the Phillies are worth rostering here.
Yep. All right, 3 games, 10 minutes. We got this. No problem here. We're getting out a little early because celebrating Mama Gundacker's birthday. That's where Gun is. And then producer Mike, he's got to go officiate a wedding here. And that starts at 5:30. So we're not going to screw around too much for our last few games, but it should go.
We're putting major events in people's lives on hold for you guys, just so that we can put a show out here. So
so we better get some likes here. Get some likes. And then those of you joining late, Malachar, no problem. Just rewind. You can catch us. There was nothing crazy in the lineups. We've hit nothing unexpected thus far for all the lineups that came out, at least with their core 6 or so players, with the exception of Houston. And even that wasn't much of a shock because it's rookie Jeremy Pena that's getting the night off. All right. Might need to talk pitching in this one. Not overly excited about the offenses. I was last night all in on the Padres, and that was a little bit fun, seeing that they won 12-4 after I woke up this morning, because I didn't see it last night. Joe Musgrove and Zach Gallen going against each other. Where are you placing these pitchers?
I have Musgrove number 2 by raw projection, and I want to take a look at what my model is giving him in innings here. I don't know that I would put him necessarily where he's projecting, but he's right there. I mean, he's one of the top end pitchers on this slate. And what I like about both sides of this one is neither pitcher's getting all that much ownership. The Diamondbacks have been a little bit frisky, but I don't know if they've been frisky enough that it's knocking down Joe Musgrove to 6.7% at 8,400 on DK, 1.2% for 10-3, a very different salary on the FanDuel slate. Musgrove is very, very capable, 24.1% strikeout rate for the season, 3.49 xFIP, doesn't give up a ton of power, doesn't get himself in trouble all that often. So I think the Diamondbacks are maybe pulling a little bit more respect than they deserve. They were probably disrespected earlier. Now they're maybe getting a little overrated. I think we can get to some shares of Joe Musgrove, particularly at that DK $8,400 price and 6.7% ownership. That's a little odd that he's going that under-owned. That's too much respect for the D-backs. On the other side, 26.5% strikeout rate for Gallen, 3.32 xFIP, a 0.91 whip, very, very good whip, not allowing a lot of power, 1.79% home run rate. I think there's good reason to roster him as well. 9,900 on DK, 2.7% owned, 1.3% for 10 grand on the FanDuel slate. I like both pitchers here. I think they're both going a little bit under owned. You're dealing with tough matchup for Gallen, probably the more difficult matchup for Gallen with Soto Machado part of the lineup, Josh Bell if he's in the lineup, Brandon Drury. The rest of that lineup is kind of pushovers. Everybody's heard me talk about it a bunch of times throughout the year. So I don't really fear the Padres. I certainly don't fear the Diamondbacks. Give me shares of both pitchers.
All right. Hitter. Excuse me. Hitters kind of the usual suspects here. Both reasonably good pitchers, but this is kind of a mix and match. We're not going to avoid them. The Padres have disappointed for quite some time. Just, it's like the Nationals that they traded for brought the stink of the Nationals over with them. So that's been a rough one, but you guys know what to do to mix and match for them. Dodgers, we talked about a little bit at the beginning of the show, but this is something we'll want to put in our back pocket on the go forward. They have such a commanding lead right now. They have a 5-game lead over Houston for the best record in baseball. So that each team right now across the league has between 17 and 20 games to play over the next 3 weeks. So it's going to be hard for them to lose that lead. Could they? Yes. Probably not, though. Then they have a 9.5 game lead on the Mets for the best record in the National League. And then they've already clinched the National League West. The point where I'm getting to here is they're not going to overwork their pitchers. They're going to keep everybody on a regular rotation. They probably are going to do that with their hitters as well. Now, how are they going to do that? Well, they're going to pull them early because a lot of their veterans, they want their baseball players are creatures of habit. They'd rather go through the routine, play the game, get 2 or 3 live at bats, and then be done, rather than have full days off at this point or a lot of days off. So the interesting thing about the Dodgers, I went back and looked over their last 6 games. I believe it was in only 1 or only 2. There were only 2 pinch hit actions in any of those games. Now, a couple of the games, they started the understudies, so they didn't need to. But the point is, if you're going to be playing Freeman and you're going to be playing Muncy and Seager and Betts, there's a decent chance that they're going to get pulled in the later innings. And then it's almost assured if the Dodgers are up. So that's something to keep in mind. The other side, they're going against Sean Hjelle. I like that name. I just had to go look that up. That is how it is pronounced, according to Baseball Reference. What I did not know is he pitched 3 years for Kentucky, and then he slogged his way through the minors. A little bit of a derailment because of the pandemic. He had only pitched at a little bit of A, high A, and then some double A. Had to take the year off. Then he started out again in double A after the pandemic. So he's worked his way up to here. He's their 32nd ranked prospect for San Francisco. That's not the top 100 of the league. That's just San Francisco. So you can safely target him. But again, with who? That becomes the tricky part there. Anything you want to add to this? Because we got a little bit more to talk about in the next game. You can lead into the pitchers for our last game of the night.
Yeah, so just looking at the ownership on Julio Urias, specifically on DK, he's pulling 21.6% ownership at 9,200. And with that innings question mark of the depth and just his normal depth of start is, maybe not justifying that degree of ownership over there, particularly when the pitchers in the last game were low single digits for, at worst, equally talented, if not more talented pitchers in what I don't consider. I know the Giants haven't been great, but I mean, the Diamondbacks are 1% below average creating runs against righties. So that speaks to some upside for Joe Musgrove. They've been good with some power and with avoiding strikeouts in the situation, but he's Joe Musgrove. He's a very good pitcher. So by comparison, I think Urias is very over-owned in this spot on DK. On FanDuel, he's not getting any attention, 5.4% for 9,900. If you want to take some shots, I'm concerned about the innings, but I do think there's a little bit of upside going against the Giants. It's just that DK spot. I would be well under, and I would just throw those shares to a Joe Musgrove or maybe to a Zach Gallen or to both on the DK slate there. So that's just very interesting. Giants, Dodgers, you can absolutely load up on the bats. Everybody knows top to bottom, 1 through 9. I love the back end of this lineup because there's some extreme power hitters down there and they never get any attention. So I like going to those guys, adding them into stacks with the top end of the lineup. And then
just don't get mad if they get pulled. That's the only thing.
Don't get mad if they get pulled. Don't get mad if they give you a 0. I mean, that's the nature of the play. You're looking for that early dinger, that 3-run shot out of Joey Gallo, and then you don't care that he hits the bench.
You can still play them. You can still absolutely play them.
Yep.
Just don't get pissed when they're up 7-0 and they start getting pulled in the 7th.
Right. You're not catching anybody. You might set an early pace, but you might not catch anybody with those players, if that makes sense, even with it coming in the later game. And then the last game that we've got on deck here with the Mariners and the Angels, George Kirby against Shohei Ohtani, I think is a premium pitching matchup on both sides. Kirby, probably the more interesting of the two, particularly on FanDuel, 9,300, only 1% owned. It's another spot I don't really understand where we've got the field projected. So if that's accurate, that's a mistake by the field. Kirby's a very good pitcher, 24.9% strikeout rate, only a 3% walk rate on the season. We know there are some strikeouts in the Angels lineup. We know that they've made some improvements by adding like the David Fletchers of the world that'll bring the average down, but there are definitely still some key strikeout spots. Fletcher's not in the projected. They've got Mickey Moniak in the leadoff spot in the projected. So it's an extreme strikeout in the projected version of this lineup. We'll see what comes to the table, but I think there's major upside for Kirby at the FanDuel price and popularity. And then for only 8,000, he should be drawing more than 8% ownership on DK. So that's a great value spot, great SP2 spot. Ohtani,
what do you need to say? 33% strikeout rate is a superstar of a pitcher. If you can afford him, get him into your lineups. He's not all that popular, under 20% on DK, 10% on FanDuel. Tough matchup against the Mariners. I've come to respect this lineup. It's a exciting young up and coming team. Mariners, Diamondbacks, Royals, and the Orioles are all going to get very interesting very quickly over the next couple of seasons. So it's going to be fun to watch, but they're not intimidating me out of my Ohtani shares in this spot. If I want to get there, I will.
All right. With that, we are going
Look at this guy in his tux.
I know. I want to see
that over to the producer cam.
Come on,
to the people.
Come on, Mike. You have.
He's got his hair all combed and looking nice. Got a clip-on bow tie.
All right. There we go. Mike's.
That's that. Yeah. There we go. Now he's got the Eagles hat on. Now he looks familiar. Now I recognize him.
So now you know why we're running out of here a little early. Mike's going to go off and officiate a wedding. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We appreciate it. Tune in tomorrow, 9 a.m., 4 hours of NFL content before kickoff. A bonus show over on the Osmo Fantasy Football channel with Nick Lepre, answering any start sit, any other questions you want. Not as crowded in that chat. That'll be at 11:30. And then at 7 o'clock, yes, 7 o'clock, we're coming back tomorrow night to do Sunday Night Football live before lock. With that, gamers, good luck.